There is, however, another thing that we kind of found ourselves feeling inclined to talk about tonight that I think it has some odd parallels and connections to the Wolverine.
Well, I mean, of course, there was X-Men Origins Wolverine, and then they decided we're going to give it the, which is what they did with this next movie.
Because another movie just did that. They gave it the. Lose the for Facebook, it's cleaner. Put the on it, it's grittier. So spoiler alerts for The Batman. The Batman.
We both saw it in theaters. I saw it a few days ago. You saw it. It's Friday, March 11th. You saw it almost a week ago, correct?
I saw it last weekend, yes.
So what did you... Because I personally, I did not ultimately enjoy it. But I'd like to hear your thoughts, because it sounds like you enjoyed it. Although I don't know. Like, how should we...
No, it's weird. I think there's a lot that I like about it. I don't know if I enjoyed it.
Interesting.
Because, like, I think that it's quite accomplished. I think it looks great. It sounds great. I think a lot of the acting performances are good in it, with the exception of, I think, unfortunately, Dano. I think that Dano doesn't really come through as much of anything in it, which is a real disappointment. And I think that it's weird that it's like a 3-hour movie in which he learns a good lesson, but we don't really get to, like, see him become or take any action with the lesson that he learns. And it's like, if I'm getting like 3 hours of this movie just for him to learn a lesson and go, well, next time, it's like, let me see, especially when you have like a plot with your main villain that feels like it's waiting for like a personal resolution at the end that it also doesn't get. And you're kind of like, how is it that this movie's 3 hours long and it feels like the third act is underbaked?
Yeah, no, I agree.
Like,
it does kind of all. It also just kind of feels to me like almost, and I don't even know where the split mark is, but it feels less to me like kind of one big feature film, and it feels more like 2 extended television episodes. Like, it just feels like kind of this ongoing kind of anthology that seems like it would keep going, because there's just so many things that they... And I guess that's going to be the idea about creating this universe, but the fact that they kind of have a character like the Penguin to kind of do nothing in this movie and to sort of be in one sequence that is like truly memorable and one of the few, I think,
I don't
cinematics.
mind that.
I don't know. I don't love the fact that I didn't find the Riddler a very compelling villain. I didn't really...
That's the problem, I think.
His goal... I didn't really even understand his goal in the end, and like, I guess... flooding the city and maybe shooting the mayor, like, it was all just...
Yeah, that sucks. I just wanted to...
We should have gave a spoilers alert to this.
Yeah, hard spoiler, dude.
We're spoiling the Batman guy.
I'll throw this forward. So spoilers for The Batman. I'll cut that in earlier. But also leave what I just did. I'm just going to copy it and put it earlier and leave this. And but so it feels like, so he kind of has this plot that just doesn't feel like it really adds up to much. And it's like, oh, I guess the twist is that Gotham is corrupt. And it's like, I've heard this one before.
We know that.
And then it's like Thomas Wayne was corrupt, but not really. And he was so not corrupt that somebody murdered him for it. And it's like, oh, okay, so I guess nothing too challenging there. And it's weird because just the way my brain, like Kevin Bacon game brain works when I think about this, is the weird thing, like, of Matt Reeves kind of got this Batman movie because of his success of kind of doing what James Mangold did for for Wolverine. He did to Planet of the Apes, where he came in on the second movie with a really specific vision and like made a movie that I found like ultimately like interesting, but underwhelming and never really feeling much more than the sum of its parts.
Yeah,
and
that's a good way of putting it.
That those movies, those two Matt Reeves Planet of the Apes movies, them comparing to James Mangold's Wolverine movies, are written by Mark Bombeck, who wrote the Wolverine. So that's another kind of odd tie to that.
Interesting enough. Yeah.
But I think that this Matt Reeves movie also kind of feels that way to me, like a thing that looks interesting and kind of strikes some beautiful imagery, is clearly really well made, and is full of, I think, good ideas, but then never really feels much more than like the sum of its parts, and doesn't really give me this like energy that like electrifies me in any way.
Yeah, and to me never really felt very cinematic. Like it never really felt very like I think I liked
its commitment to the tone, but
I guess I just wanted more. It was just the tone to me felt very self-serious. Like I wanted more sequences like I mean, not the actual action sequence, but just kind of the framing and the build up to kind of Batman walking with like exploding cars behind him. Just kind of the building of that entire sequence is very cinematic, but not much else do I kind of feel like you get a lot of that. Like I feel like it's very, and the fact that a lot of this movie is just kind of like just dialogue done in this whisper grumble. Like everyone's just constantly speaking in the same tone, and I found myself very bored by the Batman most of the time, and I wish there was something kind of going on in the tone a little bit more. The tone feels a little kind of empty and dead to me, I guess, which is weird because it's supposed to be a cold movie, but I feel more that way.
And I think I understand why they're doing it, but I also think that it's not letting itself feel like a fully it doesn't feel like a thing that's developing or changing at all. And again, for being like a 3-hour piece on this, I think that for him to learn his lesson of like, there's a fine line between Bruce Wayne dressing up as Batman and like an angry dude with a gun on the internet. There's a fine line between that. And that energy of like, I am vengeance. Like, I think that if the character learns that lesson and that is applied to the third act of this movie, that makes the intense self-seriousness of the first act or two all feel really intentional and of a piece, and feel like it's like committed to this bigger picture. And I think that what it builds to of like the image of like, he reaches in and grabs the hand of like a kid and pulls them out and walks these people out of the water. Like if that's supposed to be like his catharsis of like, see who he's like evolved into, I'm like, that's not enough for me.
Yeah, I agree. No, I agree.
And I just like kept thinking, as all that was happening, I was like, there's still got to be like a third act, like actually about like what the Riddler really wants and like what's going to feel like personal and how he like learned from this. And then I looked and I was like, oh no, there's like maybe like 14 minutes left in this movie.
Yeah, basically. And you get that kind of lame just scene that might as well have been a post-credit scene of just Riddler singing. Well, no, I'm sorry, it's not when Riddler's singing Ave Maria, but it's just the scene of him and Joker kind of talking to each other across cells from one another. I really just kind of felt like by the end it just didn't feel like it amounted to much. And then I have to say, probably, I haven't said this yet, I might not be a fan of Robert Pattinson as an actor. I think it might be official. I don't think he ever works as Batman or Bruce Wayne in this movie. I never find him. I think he constantly sounds like the Coon from South Park. Like when that character is using his like his Batman voice. Like I can't take him seriously in this role. Like I really struggled to. And maybe it's supposed to be kind of a whiny child, but his depiction is like a whiny child. Yeah, and I find that a very uninteresting depiction of Batman. I didn't find it interesting at all.
I think that it's unpleasant.
I guess so. Yeah.
And this is, and again, like I have a lot. The more I think about the movie, the more it like does not really work for me. But I think that his performance is unpleasant, and I think that the whole point, as I said, is that like the people who he has the most in common with in this film are angry dudes on the internet with guns.
Yeah.
And I think that the energy around this guy being like, I am vengeance, that ultimately, like I said, I don't think it actually builds to showing the change, but that clearly is the point of this movie, is him learning that lesson. And if they're trying to make a trilogy or, you know, whatever, I think they've signed him on for 3 movies. I think that I guess, and like I said, I would have done it faster, but I guess their point is that they want him to learn that lesson because right now he's an angry child. And that's a take. Guess. And I that is like unpleasant, but it also kind of like, if you're doing like the detective story and like the psychoanalysis of who in their like late 20s, early 30s would be doing this, it would be like a angry, repressed dude who's like fucking angry at the world, and like you kind of get it and you believe it, and it's like unpleasant, but you're like, yeah, okay, like I fucking I see it, and it like, and they hit it on the head by fucking scoring it with Nirvana. But I think that they're clearly to me that's very intentional, whether it's like pleasant or successful. I think that's clearly the point.
Oh, I think it's the point. I just think it's a bad point, because ultimately I understand.
But it could be a bad point and a good performance.
I don't know, because like I didn't find anything, and maybe it's because I didn't really love the script. There was never anything interesting or dynamic to Robert Pattinson's performance. He was just the same thing the whole time, and I couldn't really connect with anything ever. And it's mostly because I know Batman's angry. I understand Batman's angry. If your entire movie's point is to tell me Batman should stop being angry, it's like, yeah, I fucking know. Thank you. We know he's angry. Can you do something else with this character?
Right. And I think I would have been way more accepting of it being the first and the second act of this movie, as opposed to it being the first, second, and third act. It would have made the first and second act much more tolerable if you get to see him evolve past that, and you don't, and it makes it frustrating. I think
it's a very frustrating film, but yeah, maybe if they. If the character can grow, maybe I can find Robert Pattinson's performance interesting. But as of now, man, I'm just like, I
think that the kind of the commitment, as I think you're pointing out in the screenplay, to have it be like, these are these early versions of these characters. They are what we are going to see grow into the Penguin, see grow into Catwoman, see grow into the fully adult realized Batman, all those things. But it makes it's so committed to that it makes it, as you're saying, it's so flatlined in all their characterizations. I think that that's a real problem for Catwoman in this. Like, the most interesting thing about Catwoman in any version of Catwoman is the question of where her allegiances lie. Mm-hmm. And that is done barely at all, and when it is bad. Where
it's like, once again,
questions her, and she has a great answer for why she's doing what she's doing, and you're like, oh, okay, you're like a really reasonable and justified person.
I wonder if they're playing the long game, though, of like, oh, she's eventually gonna get fucked over and not be as trusting anymore of people.
I guess, but you just gave me 3 hours of a movie, man.
Agreed. No, I agree with you. It's like, yeah, it was very... For a 3-hour-long movie, I felt the time, and it was a very just underwhelming ending. And yeah, I would say the highlight for me is that car chase, as I would assume it is for a lot of people. That's the thing I remember most from the movie.
Yeah.
And the rest is just kind of a cell phone with Riddler's face on it. Like a very, like, for everyone who picks on Batman Forever, it's a much fucking better depiction of the Riddler, I think, in Batman Forever than there is in this movie. Like, maybe there were more riddles in this movie. Maybe there were more puzzles.
But all the riddles are solved so fast.
Yeah.
And the one riddle that they actually spend multiple times, the one riddle they spend multiple scenes thinking about is, like, about, like, the rat with wings, and the whole time you're like, a bat. And it takes like 4 scenes for someone to be like, that sounds like a bat. And you're like, I'm fucking sorry. What? Like, and how is anybody involved in the police department or Arkham Asylum not know that Bruce Wayne is Batman? I'm sorry. Now we're just really going into this. This movie is so, I think, how is this movie 3 hours long when it feels like it missed everything?
It missed everything. No, like, it definitely, like, I felt, yeah, I felt...
That's so weird that I feel that way. Shit.
No, and it is definitely a movie that the more I think on it, the less
the dumber
it kind
feels.
of... Yeah, the more infuriating it's going to become. This is definitely... Yeah, I don't know if I've really, truly thought they've done a great Batman movie still since the Dark Knight, the 2008 one. So I was not a fan of the Batman. I'd give that movie a 5 out of 10. That's what, and that's only because I've seen it once. I bet you it'd get fucking worse.
And I'd probably give it about a 5 out of 10 as well, which is what I would give the Wolverine, the Batman, and the Wolverine. At least the Wolverine is shorter. The Batman, I think, looks better. It has at least more of a fucking style to it than the Wolverine.
See, I definitely think the Wolverine has the more interesting style, and now I guess we'll go back to that movie.